4, 3, 2, 1, and cut to camera 3. Hello everyone, this is Pierre Côté with you, Pierre Côté from Real Time Reality. We're doing this live. I have a really special guest with me. I thought he was in New York City, but actually he is in Montreal, so that's kind of funny. Welcome, Harold Crooks.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. This is the first time I've done something as multimedia-genic as this, so thank you very much, Pierre.
Oh, great. So for the one who doesn't know who's Harold Crooks, basically he's a writer, producer. He works on many movies like Anthrax War, Cars' History, Inside the Great Magazine, Betting on Love, Black Coffee, Bhopal, The Search of Justice, The World Stop Watching, The Corporation, Night on Time, and he was also acknowledged in the credit of the now classic movie Manufacturing Consent. I'm sorry.
Got it.
Noam Chomsky and the Media. So movie, it's now a classic. And now you're here to talk about the movie Pax Americana and the weaponization of space. Let me ask you a question before we start. You know what we should do? I'm gonna roll the trailer of the movie, so they're gonna give people the sort of a taste of what this movie is all about. What do you think?
Sounds good to me, Pierre.
Okay.
But can I just say one thing?
Yeah, sure.
One little word. It's interesting that you mentioned manufacturing consent, because manufacturing consent is basically a documentary about the political views of the American linguist Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
And that was done many years ago directed by Mark Akbar and Peter Wintonic. And Mark Akbar, many years later, is now the executive producer of Pax Americana, which began when the director, Denis Delestrac, was interviewing Noam Chomsky for a book that he was doing about threats to humanity in the 21st century. And Chomsky started talking about the weaponization of space, which few people, including Denis, had ever heard about. So that basically was the original seed for this project, this film. And Chomsky is an element that runs through this whole history.
It's really interesting. So let's take just 2 minutes because we're going to use, so since we can use video, so let's roll the credit. The movie's called Pax America. And 3, 2, 1, and roll.
Denial implies the use of force.
Weapons from space to the ground.
The United States is going to become the space policeman.
Can the United States Air Force do this mission without weapons?
We're going to reel 38 Addison. Deck 1's open.
We have no open jobs. This until 1727.
We are so dominant in space that I pity a country that would come up against us.
China carried out its first anti-satellite weapons test.
If aimed at commercial satellites, and such an attack could bring U.S. business and industry to a halt.
Space is the backbone of our national security. There is no substitute, and there is no alternative to military dominance in space.
We have to move on to control space in order to protect commercial interests and investment.
Big profits.
This is our space tracking surveillance system.
Billions of dollars on research.
This is a cool business that we are in.
We, 5% of the world's population in the United States, are going to deny other countries access to space. I mean, absolutely provocative.
Pentagon officials say it's the first step toward eventually putting weapons into space.
An Earth surrounded by an outer layer of weapons.
Heavy tungsten metal rods from satellites onto the Earth.
Would it really be that big a step if a projectile itself were also launched from space? There's no practical difference. And I'd venture to say that the person on the receiving end wouldn't see the distinction either.
That's a reality. And if we don't accept that, well, we're just whistling in the dark. And we're going to be victims of our own technology.
Weaponization of space has happened a long time ago. And it's foolish to think that somehow we can stuff this genie into a bottle.
So, Harold, let me ask you the first question. Why this movie is important to go see?
Well, firstly, just at the level of a movie and a cinematic experience, it's been filmed by a great Québécois cinematographer, Jean-Pierre Saint-Louis.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary experience of ravishing imagery. But that's purely at the level of aesthetics and cinema pleasure. The larger reason is that, as many people on all sides of the political spectrum testified to in this film, this is a form of technological progress that actually puts human survival at risk. I mean, if humanity were to go ahead and use the heavens as a military high ground and weaponized space, the chances of human survival are probably quite slight. It's a terrifying new theater of war, and it is probably an area of the cosmos which should never, never become an arena for warfare. And the documentary goes into the history of the evolution of the militarization of space, going back to the first ballistic missile, the Nazi Vengeance 2 missile, which was launched in the summer of 1944. The story of Wernher von Braun and his 100 Rocketeers being brought to the United States after the Second World War, the development of space, military space capability up to the present. So it's an important film.
You could have done, I think you will agree that you could have done a book around this story, right?
Well, there have been many books done around this subject, and the film is an attempt to distill the essence of these critical analyses of the development of the militarization of space and possibly the weaponization of space into one 85-minute experience.
Yeah. So you won several awards. We're talking now because this movie will start is Tear of Life in Quebec. So from a Canadian / Quebecer point of view, what Canadian citizen should do? Let's go the movie right. But what we can do is not only like a U.S. thing, or there's a still Canadian issue in that movie.
Well, activism in Canada is probably one of the most successful examples on the planet of a mass movement resisting the plans of a government to become involved in what used to be known as Star Wars or missile defense. Missile defense is really the other phase of the weaponization of space. One of the things that the film shows is that if someone in the film says the greatest con or the greatest fraud